Hello everyone, and today I'm finishing the Sonic retrospective by doing a ranking of every Sonic game I meant to review. Those games being Sonic Adventure, Sonic Adventure 2, Sonic Heroes, 06, Secret Rings, Unleashed, Black Knight, Colors, Generations, Lost World, Sonic Boom, Rise of Lyric, Sonic Boom Shatter Crystal, Sonic Boom Fire and Ice, Sonic Mania / Sonic Mania Plus, and Sonic Forces. Now note, I will do a review for Sonic Frontiers when I get the game. So let's make a quick video on me ranking all these Sonic games. Who am I kidding? This video will be an hour long and I'll be spending most of the time editing, being miserable, and wondering what I'm doing with my life. Anywho, let's begin.
First of all, your Jordans are completely fake.
You know, when I started this countdown, I had a strong feeling Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric would be at the bottom. I mean, what else could be worse? It's a boring waste of time. Then I played Sonic and the Secret Rings. Yep, this is the worst Sonic game in my opinion. I am so thankful I'm not reviewing this, but let me just get a quick rundown of my problems with it, starting with the story. So Sonic gets kidnapped by Discount Shantae and sent to the Arabian Nights to fight Discount Majin Buu. I know someone called me Johnny already made that joke, but hey, I'm already watching Dragon Ball, so I can make that joke. Anywho, it's up to Sonic to stop him. But oh wait, he's shot and has a fire on his chest that if it goes out, it will kill him. Like a Charmander. But don't worry, you don't need to worry about that plot point because it never gets brought up again and is really pointless to the overall story. So Sonic has to find the 7 World Rings. Totally not the 7 Chaos Emeralds, guys. And has to stop Eraser Jin. That's the story. Oh wait, but I forgot something because the writers forgot about it too. Apparently, Shara has a crush on Eraser Jin and is sad when he dies at the end. Yeah, I forgot about that because the writers forgot to bring it up earlier in the story. So, in my opinion, let me get the good things out of the way first. Number 1, the CGI cutscenes, especially the ending, is actually pretty good. I thought the ending cutscene with Sonic and Shara was actually well done, and I do like the cutscene presentation in-game where it looks like storybooks. It actually fits the mood and looks pretty good. Other than that, this game sucks. The best way I can describe the gameplay of Secret Rings is if Sonic Free Riders was made before Sonic Free Riders. It is next to uncontrollable. I was right in front of the TV screen, and guess what? My movements felt awkward. Sonic's jumps, his homing attack, everything just felt awkward and janky. Even the tutorial just made me want to stop playing after doing one mission. It's that badly designed. And you know what? This is the worst story progression out of any Sonic game, because half the time they'll tell you to do one mission in one area and then tell you to do a completely different mission in another area without any clarification. And I had to look up a Let's Play so I didn't have to do half the pointless missions. Dear God! And also, how are the boss fights? Well, they also suck too, especially the final boss against Eraser Jin. Oh yeah, after you defeat Eraser Jin for the first time, they give you a fake ending, and then you have to go and fight him again in his final form. Now yes, Sonic and the Black Knight did that, but that was because of a plot twist. I could understand it there. Here, there was no reason at all. It's just wasting the player's time. And how's the music? The soundtrack sucks. Okay? There is no track I remember out of the title theme, which is just because it's in all the menus, and Who's Gonna Rock the Place. That's because I watched Kobanamani 456 when I was a kid. Other than the 2 positives I brought up, I never want to touch Sonic and the Secret Rings ever again. The only game I can think of that I have played that I hate just as much as this game is Mega Man X7. That's how much I despise this game. And don't worry, when I do the Mega Man X ranking video, X7 is going to go through some hell. So, yeah. Let's just move on to the next number.
We're better at this in our world.
So now that I talked about the worst Sonic game ever made, let me talk about the second worst Sonic game ever made. Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric. Now, much like Secret Rings, there are a few positives I want to get out of the way real quick. Number 1, the voice acting. I think some of the voice actors, particularly Roger Craig Smith, fit better in the Boom games than the mainline series, with the exceptions being Colleen and Mike Pollock. They're great in both the main series and the Boom games. Secondly, Amy is actually fun to play as in this game. Sure, yes, she is fun to play as in the Advance and Sonic Heroes, but here, this is the first time I would say she's the best character to play as. Her triple jump makes her great for platforming, her hammer gives her good range when it comes to combat, and in terms of regular walking speed, she's probably the fastest character in the game. Yes, even more so than Sonic. So she's my instant choice when it comes to picking characters. Outside of that, however, this game is just awful to play as. It is boring, and since all the characters move relatively slowly, it takes forever. In these hub worlds, these are the worst hub worlds in any Sonic game. Imagine the forest hub world in Sonic 06, but you had 3 of them. That's how boring and lifeless these hub worlds are. Heck, one of them is the town from the Boom cartoon, but there's next to nobody, so why is the mayor wanting to get reelected? There's nobody to vote for him at all. And how do the other characters play as? Well, Tails is there, really. Knuckles is just boring to play as. And Sonic, well, he does have a decent homing attack combo. His gameplay is just boring since he moves at the speed of a snail. Heck, in Sonic 06, I think he had better walking speed than in this game because he's just jogging. The only time you ever feel like he's going fast is when he's hydro dashing or when he's spin dashing. Now, I get that they had to slow him down to make sure you don't just play as him in the hub world, but because of how huge these hub worlds are, I would like to go fast and explore them. You know what I mean? And the levels, they just go on forever with endless, repetitive button mashing. Now look, I don't mind beat-em-up games. I love hack and slash games like Kingdom Hearts and No More Heroes 2. Well, the entire No More Heroes games, but those games had fun combat systems. Here, I literally just use the beam to just throw them off the edge most of the time to speed up the combat. It's that bad. And another issue with the game is that for a reboot that's in a different universe, it does a poor job of explaining the characters' relationships, especially Shadow. Why does he hate Sonic? Why does he call him weak and pathetic? We don't know, just shut up and play the game. And the villain Lyric is just bland. There could have been a good scene with him with Sonic and Lyric when they time travel, but they do next to nothing other than Sonic being like, oh, okay, why don't I make you a villain even though I could have helped you and prevented all of this? Way to go, Sonic, you just doomed us all. And the boss fights are just boring and repetitive. Heck, Metal Sonic is just a precursor to the Infinite and Metal Sonic boss in Sonic Forces. And also, this game is just nothing. It is a waste of time. I would not recommend playing it, and just stay away. Oh, and also this has the worst soundtrack in any Sonic game. The only track I can remember is the title theme, but even then it's because the endless loop that goes on for no end. And the levels, well, they're just an excuse for button mashing, and they're just pathetic levels. They're not fun or creative, they're just there. Anywho, oh yeah, I forgot to include this in the video, so I'll just include it here before we go on to the next number. Before anyone asks, I would rather take the glitches in Sonic 06 than in this game, because in the cutscene I'm showing you right now, when I played through Rise of Lyric, it caused my Wii U to screech. Just do what you gotta do. After this cutscene, we're gonna end it for this. What the hell? What the hell is that? My Xbox 360, well, my brother's Xbox 360, never screeched while I played Sonic 06. So yeah, thanks, Rise of Lyric. Anyway, let's move on to the next number.
Focus, guys! We need someone to break into Eggman's base.
Sonic's right here.
Shut up! Get that thing out of here!
Wow, rude.
Number 13 is Sonic Forces. This game genuinely disappoints me the most out of any Sonic game. For starters, this game could have had a great story. Think about it. Eggman rules the world and it's up to Sonic and friends to stop him. Imagine the creative levels they could have had, with beat-em-up levels with Vector and Knuckles, or stealth levels with Rouge and Espio. The possibilities are endless! Instead, we had to play as modern Sonic, classic Sonic, Mania Sonic, because apparently Sonic Mania is actually in another universe. Because that makes sense. And of course, the Avatar. Oh, and also might I add that literally every other character but those three do absolutely nothing. The only one who comes close is Silver when he fights Infinite. In fact, what was even the point of bringing in the Chaotix? They're just there for fan service and do nothing of service. Now yes, you could say the same thing for Sonic Generations, but this game has almost every big Sonic character in it. So why not have them contribute something of value? Dear God, this game! And also, Infinite could have been a great villain. However, the biggest issue with Infinite is that we barely know anything about him. And don't say, read the comics, because the comics didn't come with the game. So why should I have to read them? Oh, and also, Eggman has one of the stupidest plans at the end of the game, where he decides to try and use the sun to kill everyone. Eggman, that would kill you as well. Dear God! And how's the gameplay? Well, for modern Sonic, I'd say he's the best character to play as. Like, sure, yes, this is clearly the worst boost game, but still, he is just okay in this game. Like, he controls decently, but yeah. The Avatar, oh God. Now, I get it, the original Do Not Steal meme, but still. Now, when it comes to the Wispins, honestly, I just use the fire one because it's the one that has the best when it comes to taking care of enemies. The others are just there if you want to go for other collectibles, but I said nope. And Classic Sonic, dear God, what did they do to my boy? Classic Sonic does not have good momentum, his jumps feel off, and even the drop dash doesn't have as good momentum as it did in Sonic Mania. How could they do this? And then there's the stages. Now, some of them can be fun, like the Pyramid stage and the final regular modern Sonic stage, but most of them are just boring because literally they go on for about a minute and a half. Now yes, Team Rose in Sonic Heroes had short stages, but that's because they were the easy mode, so I'm willing to forgive it. Here on the other hand, there is no reason why I should beat a stage in less than a minute. I am not making this up, people. This is not good design. And let's talk about how creative these levels are. Literally, most of them is just Green Hill and Chemical Plant and Sunset Heights. Oh yeah, I forgot, they actually did have another character playable, Shadow. And you know what? He's unironically the best character to play as in the game. I'm not joking, I actually had fun with Shadow. I don't know why, I just thought his gameplay was decent and actually pretty good. Now, yes, he is just a clone of Sonic, but hey, he actually controls better. I don't know how to explain it, I just thought that Shadow controlled better than every other character in the game. Oh, and let's not forget the fact that these bosses are just pathetic. Infinite and Metal Sonic are literally the exact same boss fight, and you don't even get to fight Chaos or Shadow. So, what was even the point of teasing them, and even teasing an evil Shadow if you're not going to do anything with that? And I will say this, the best boss in the game is actually Zavok, who's the first boss. I don't know why, I actually thought it was a cool fight because it actually was fun, and it actually had some creativity to it. However, the final boss kind of ruins it since each stage is literally just a repeat of previous bosses. The first phase is a repeat of the Egg Dragoon fight, where you need Classic Sonic to bounce rocks back into it. The second phase with the Avatar is literally a repeat of Zavok's with the following stage parts. And the third and final phase is literally just a rehash of Sonic Colors' final boss, which was reused in Sonic Lost World. But at least in Sonic Lost World, they had a different design. This is literally the Wisp armor from Sonic Colors, except it's a different color. Why? Oh God. I'm not joking, this game hurts me in so many different ways, because I wanted to love this game. I wish this could have been the greatest Sonic game of all time, but it's just nothing. It's just nothing. The only thing memorable about it is that they have the Sonic shirt in it. That's it. I just hope Sonic Frontiers will be good. That's all I want. Next number.
You know what I see? I see a strong, confident, beautiful young lady. Oh, look, you're here too.
Sonic Boom Shattered Crystal is a thing that exists. It's not as bad as the previous 3 games, but it's certainly not a good game. Not by any margin. Okay, to start off with the good, I can say at least that for a 3DS game, the graphics don't look that bad. They actually look pretty good, except for Knuckles' mouth. He looks like he has chipmunk mouth, but okay. And I will say, Sonic is actually pretty fun to play as in this game, and the characters are decently controlled. However, that's also an issue because Sonic's the only one I really play as because of his air dash ability, while with Tails, Knuckles, and Sticks, they're not bad. It's just that I feel forced to use them because of Sonic's air dash. He makes him the best character in the game, but with the others, they just don't feel as fun to play as Sonic, and I only use them when I have to. So, yeah, that's kind of not good. And the other big issue with the game is the repetitiveness to it. Literally, the mechanic of you can't progress until you have this certain amount can get really annoying really fast, especially if you search around the area but can't find it. And also, there is one thing that ruins exploration: the boost pads. If you accidentally go on a boost pad and you missed an item, well, congratulations, you have to restart the entire stage just to find that one item. Gee, isn't that fun? Oh, and also, much like Sonic Boom, Rise of Lyric, Shadow has no point in this game's story. You could literally remove him and nothing would have changed. And finally, my last issue is how all the bosses feel the same, with them just being races, and they just get really boring after a while. But yeah, Sonic Boom Shattered Crystal is just a game that exists. It's not terrible, but it's not a game I recommend playing. Anywho, next entry.
I wanted to. I'll be a hero.
Sonic Boom Fire and Ice is another thing that exists. Okay, in all honesty, between this and the next 2 entries, I had a hard time ranking the 3, so I decided to rank them on how much I can talk about it. And yeah, Sonic Boom Fire and Ice drew the short straw. Now, in terms of things I like, it did fix some things from Sonic Boom Shattered Crystal. You don't have to collect every item in order to progress. You can literally not go for any items and you'd be able to beat the game just fine. That is a good thing. And I also like the Fire and Ice mechanic, as it did work as a nice way to test your reflexes. And I will admit, it was nice to play as Amy, and the boss fights did have some more variety compared to the previous game. However, it does have a lot of the problems I have with Sonic Boom Shattered Crystal. Most notably how, even though you have Amy as a new playable character, I mostly just stuck to Sonic. I only changed as the other characters when I had to, and honestly, with Amy, there was never a point outside like the first few levels where I had to switch to her. So, sorry Amy, the whole gimmick of you being a new character kinda didn't work for me. Sorry. I will say, one other thing I do like about this game compared to Shattered Crystal is that the cutscenes definitely have better movement to them. They look something straight out of the cartoon. And I will say, it is nice that when it comes to the text dialogue, it's actually voice acted. So that's good. But yeah, other than that, this game really has nothing to it, and that's why it's at number 11 on the list. Anywho, let's get into the top 10. Number 10 is Sonic Lost World. Now, this is actually a pretty decent game that could have been amazing if they fixed some issues I had with it. Now, in terms of the stuff I liked about it, I honestly liked how they got rid of the boost mechanic for this game. Because don't get me wrong, I love Unleash and Generations, but I just really enjoy having Sonic platform like you did in the Genesis games, and even Sonic Adventure 1, 2, Heroes, and 06. So the way they went back to that actually made me smile, and it was fun. I actually think Sonic's control was actually pretty good, and I didn't even mind the run button. It doesn't bother me like other people did. And I also liked the kick, but it does make the homing attack useless since it's pretty much just a more powered up homing attack. I also think stages like Tropical Coast and Windy Hill Zone are pretty fun stages, even if Windy Hill Zone is just another version of Green Hill Zone. And even though the first level of Sky Road is just a repeat of Windy Hill Zone, like seriously, what was the point of that? And I also don't mind some of the stage gimmicks. However, it does lead to one issue I have: stage cohesion. Here's what I mean. This game follows the Genesis approach of stages where you have some acts and then a boss fight. However, I feel like the issue is some stages don't really work in terms of cohesion. Here's what I mean. Take Desert Ruins. Not a very good first act, it's pretty long and gets pretty boring with the sand. Then you get Act 2 and 3, which are pretty fun stages. However, they don't really mesh well with the first act, and then you have Act 4, which is the boss stage, where you fight Zalmon in a desert. See how this doesn't really work? You go from a desert to a honey tree to Willy Wonka's dreams, and then back to a desert. Doesn't really make much sense. And also, I don't like how in the second act you always fight the boss, even though you're going to fight them in Act 4, so it kind of feels like padding, you know what I mean? And also, the other stages aren't really that good, like Silent Forest and Frozen Factory. These two are the most annoying stages in the game, because with Frozen Factory, how was Sega able to make Ice Cap one of the best ice stages of all time, and then make this level, which is just annoying, bad ice gimmicks, and you have to listen to Xena, who is the most annoying Deadly Six member, and with Silent Forest, you have to listen to Zor, who's the most emo person I've ever seen. In fact, the Deadly Six themselves are pretty mediocre villains, with Zavok just being the Sonic equivalent to Bowser, and most of them just having one gimmick towards them, which is kind of boring, really. However, there's another thing I just don't like about this game. The worst thing about this game's story is the stuff with Tails, because he's mad at Sonic for trusting Eggman to shut down his own machine. What? It literally makes no sense in my opinion. But there is some good things about Lost World is that the music is pretty good, and the visuals are fantastic. Despite being on the Wii U, it still looks great even today, and yeah. Now, I wish I could rank this game higher, but again, my issues does counteract some of the positives, so it goes right here at number 10. Number 9 might be controversial, so let's go on.
Sonic, come back. To me. To us.
Don't let your kids what's it?
Number 9 is Sonic the Hedgehog 2006. Okay, before we continue, let's just get the obvious out of the way. Yes, this game is a buggy mess. Yes, Amy controls like crap, her hammer doesn't have good range, and what's even the point of her invisibility? Like, that never gets brought up in the story, so what's even the point of it? Yes, Rouge and Knuckles have a terrible glitch where they can't get off walls, and they're just not fun to play as. Yes, this game's story with Sonic and Elise isn't very good. Yes, this game could have been better if they gave more time to it rather than sending half the team to work on the actual worst Sonic game ever made. Yes, Flame Core is a god-awful stage, and the boss against Iblis Phase 2 doesn't make up for it. And yes, this game is not a great game. However, I can't bring myself to hate it. This is a game that genuinely fascinates me to no end. I'm dead serious. And besides, even with the criticisms, I still think there is a lot of stuff I like about this game. For starters, I actually don't mind playing as Sonic, Shadow, or Silver. With Sonic and Shadow, they do play similarly to how they move, but I do think they have decent speed, and they're 10 times faster than Sonic and Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric. The only issues I really have with them is that for Sonic, I don't like the snowboarding, and for Shadow, his vehicles can get boring after a while, but they're not that bad. And for Silver, I actually don't mind playing as him. Now, yes, it can get quite repetitive with grabbing boxes, but honestly, it's not that bad in my opinion. I actually have some fun playing as Silver, and I feel like if Silver wasn't made in Sonic 06, he wouldn't get the negative reaction he gets from fans. Like, seriously, guys, Silver is not that bad of a character. He's just underrated in my opinion. Now, other characters like Omega, Blaze, and Tails I actually think are decent to pretty good. With Tails, I do think his dummy ring bombs aren't that great, and I will admit he could have been a bit faster, but that doesn't take away from the fact that I just think Tails is fun to play as. I don't like how he gets his own stage and Sonic storyline with a second Wave Ocean visit. Was pretty pointless. Oh, and also screw the Trials of Soliana. And for Blaze, while she is just another Sonic, I do think she is fun to play as. My only issue is her homing attack because it does feel a little bit awkward to me. But other than that, she's easily one of my favorites to play as, and she's just fun to play as in general. For Omega, he is easily the best Omego other than Blaze, because he actually has great speed, his shots do a lot of damage to enemies, and overall he's just fun to play as. Doesn't help he has infinite flight powers. Oh, and also there is something else I should bring up about the game's story. Now look, Sonic's side of the story, pretty bad. But Shadow and Silver, pretty good in my opinion. For Shadow, I actually like the dilemma he has with Mephiles. Oh, I'm sorry, Mephiles the Dark. I actually think Mephiles is the last great Sonic villain. For starters, he works as a great puppet master, trying to make the heroes do his bidding and toying with them. He's actually pretty entertaining to watch. And his villain laugh accompanied by the piano music is just perfect, alongside his theme, which is just chilling. Now, back to Shadow, I actually thought his interactions with Team Dark, and heck, even Eggman, were pretty good. I also like the Wave Ocean scene between all three members of Team Dark and Mephiles, and especially Shadow's ending, which is one of my favorite scenes in any Sonic game. Now, for Silver, I actually think he's a good character, just misrepresented. In a way, think about this for example. Your life has been utter hell. You grew up in the apocalypse with a fire demon unable to be stopped, and then someone comes along and says, hey, I have the solution. Of course you would follow them and believe what they're going to say. I actually think Silver's arc is pretty well done, and I don't think he deserves the hate he gets. Now, as for the stages, there are some that I don't like Aquatic Base because I think it goes on too long. I don't like Dusty Desert except for Sonic's portion. I don't like Tropical Jungle's Silver segment, and Flame Core, can we just agree that stage sucks in general? And the End of the World, yeah, outside of Eggman Land, that is probably the worst final stage in any Sonic game. It is next to just unplayable. But for every bad stage, we get a pretty good one. Like, for example, Wave Ocean, which I thought was a nice beach setting, even if it was just a copy-paste of Emerald Coast. I also thought that White Acropolis, outside of the snowboarding segment, was pretty fun. And I also actually got a lot of fun out of Radical Train, and especially Crisis City. No wonder that was brought back in Sonic Generations. As for the bosses, I'll admit most of them aren't that great, with the only ones I liking being the Mephiles boss fights, the boss fight against Solaris, which is, in my opinion, probably the best final boss in any Sonic game. Everything from the music to the boss itself, everything is just so epic, and I love this boss fight to no end. It is one of my favorite final bosses in any video game. And while yes, the hub worlds aren't that great, the music is just perfection. Anywho, this segment's going on too long, so let's move on to the next entry.
Alright, I don't like the sound of whatever it is you're saying, Metal Mouth. So I'm just gonna order you a knuckle sandwich with a side order of butt whooping!
Number 8 is Sonic and the Black Knight. I think this is the most underrated Sonic game of all time. For starters, I think the story is the last time we got a truly great Sonic storyline. Sonic's interactions with King Arthur, Melina, the Knights of the Round Table, Caliburn, and everyone was well done, and I think this is the last Sonic game to truly capture Sonic's personality. I especially love how at the end of the game, instead of being mad at Merlina, he just talks to her and says that even though the world may end, we just gotta live life to the fullest. That is one of the best messages I've ever seen in a video game in my eyes. And doesn't help that Crush 40 went all out with this game's soundtrack. Night of the Wind, Fight the Night, Live Life are all beautiful tracks, and they are just so much fun to listen to. And I also think the gameplay is much better than in Secret Rings, since you use the nunchuck in order to move Sonic and you use the Wii Remote to slash enemies. This makes the gameplay fun instead of aggravating. I will admit, the boss fights could have been better against the Knights of the Round Table and King Arthur, but the final boss against the Dark Queen was a lot of fun. But there is one issue I do have with the gameplay, that being when you play as the other Knights of the Round Table. While yes, with Lancelot it is fun, the other two, they aren't that fun to play as. I'm sorry, but playing as Gawain or Percival just isn't a fun time. Their gameplay didn't really stick out to me, and they were kind of annoying to use. Other than those two things, I think this game could have been the top 7 probably, but I will admit, this and the number 7 entry do go back and forth for me at least. So that being said, let's go on to the number 7 entry.
Okay then, let's get ready to do this. We'll show that creep the real superpower of teamwork!
Sonic Heroes. I really love this game. However, I can't deny the game does have some cracks to it. Now let me start off with the stuff I like about it, starting with the story. I like how this game doesn't really take itself seriously, it's just a fun adventure with the Sonic cast. Now yes, there are some serious stuff in there, like the stuff with Team Dark, which is good, but at the same time, I just like a fun Sonic story, and this game delivers that really well. I also like how Metal Sonic is the main villain of the game, which is actually refreshing. And I also love the ending. This is one of my favorite Sonic endings of all time. As for the gameplay, it's really good. I like the 3-person gameplay. I think each team has their own uniqueness, and all of them can be really fun. Now, for Team Sonic and Team Rose, they do act very similarly because they do have the shortest stages, but I do think both of them are fun to play through. And Team Dark, it's good, but sometimes the stages can go way too long for my liking, and I get that, but still. As for Team Chaotix, I love them as characters, and I love their story, but they can be hit and miss for me. I love their stages, like the Frog Forest stages, and of course, Seaside Hill. However, stuff like the Haunted Mansion levels is one of the reasons why I don't like those stages, no matter which character you're playing as. They are just god-awful stages. Speaking of which, the stages are really fun. I love the Seaside Hill stages, I love Grand Metropolis, I love the Frog Forest stages. Hey guys, this is me editing the video right now, but I forgot to mention that Rail Canyon and Bullet Station are also pretty decent stages. They're not my favorite, but they're just fine stages. Heck, I actually like the casino stages. They're pretty fun, especially as Team Chaotix. However, much like I stated previously, the Haunted Mansion levels suck. They go on forever, and don't even get me started on the Team Chaotix missions for those two stages. Like I said earlier, those missions and this stage are terrible. And as for Egg Fleet, it's actually a pretty decent fun level, even if it does go on a bit too long, but it's still pretty fun. Now, for the bosses, I actually think they're pretty good. I like Egg Hawk and Egg Albatross. I think Egg Emperor is okay. The team battles are pretty easy as per usual. And I also don't mind Robot Carnival or Robot Storm. And the battle against Metal Overlord is fantastic. Speaking of which, the music in this game slaps. Almost every track, even in the Haunted Mansion levels, those songs are pretty good. Also, I'm sorry, but let me go back to the gameplay segment real quick. I like how with each of the teams, even though it's the 3-person gameplay, each of them individually have their own unique quirks to them, like how SBO can go invisible, and I also think the speed characters are pretty fun. They have some decent speed, even if they do go a little too fast. The power type characters are all fun to play as. Yes, even you, Big, you're fun to play as in this one game. And the flight characters, they're okay. It is kind of disappointing how they're mostly just there to fly, but still. And even though I do have issues with Team Chaotix, Vector and SBO are still a ton of fun to play as in this game, and I also like the special moves that each team has. And finally, I'll just say this right now, yes, the special stages are terrible. They're just awful. We don't need to talk about them. And one last thing I want to wrap up real quick. The game looks fantastic. This is how I would imagine a 3D Sonic game to look like. Everything just pops. It looks beautiful. Oh yeah, that's Sonic Heroes. It may not be a perfect Sonic game, but it's still a great one in my opinion. And also, this is a good send-off for the original voice cast. They all did a fantastic job in this game. On to the next entry.
What? Tails? Watch out! You're gonna crash! Ah! Tails! Now, what am I gonna do with you?
Sonic Adventure. Now, this was the first proper 3D Sonic game that we ever got, and I still think that this game holds up well nowadays. Sure, yes, the graphics don't look that good compared to most modern games, but here's the thing, this game was made in the late 90s. It's not going to look as good as, say, a PlayStation 4 game or a PlayStation 5 game. That's ridiculous. And I do still think there are some issues, but there is a lot of stuff I do like about it. With my issues, I will admit the collision detection isn't the greatest, especially as Sonic and Tails, but that doesn't really bother me that much. It only happens every now and then. And, of course, Big the Cat. We can all agree, Big the Cat is a massive waste of time and didn't really need to be in this game's story. Hell, it's sad that Froggy serves more of a purpose to the plot than Big, a playable character. And while I do think the voice cast does a great job, yeah, you can tell that their voices are out of sync. But even so, I still think this game holds up. I think the story's a ton of fun, with the best part easily going to Gamma. I thought Gamma's story was really well done, and it's really sad that at the end, Gamma dies. It's actually one of the saddest moments in any Sonic game. Speaking of which, let's talk about the gameplay. With Sonic, I do think he is absolutely perfect in this game. He controls how you would imagine he would play in a 3D Sonic game if you played the Genesis games. My only issue with him is the light speed dash, but thankfully they fixed that in Sonic Adventure 2. As per Knuckles, he's actually my second favorite gameplay style in the game. It also works as a nice callback to Sonic 3 and Knuckles, where Knuckles had different routes compared to Sonic and Tails because of his exploration. So, having Knuckles explore the entire stage works perfectly. While yes, with Tails, his stages are a bit easy, it's so fun to beat Sonic in a race that I don't mind personally. And with Amy, she's also a decent playable character. Not great, but she has her moments, especially with the Whack-A-Mole segment on the egg carrier. With Gamma, while yes, his stages are just press this button and you win, it's still fun and I don't mind it. While yes, his bosses could have been better, except for Beta Mark II, that was actually a pretty fun boss, I don't personally mind playing as Gamma. He is just as fun as Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles. Big the Cat, yeah, we can all agree his stages are bad. Let's just move on to the hub worlds, and honestly, these are the best hub worlds in any Sonic game. They are just so much fun to explore, and my personal favorite characters to play as in the hub worlds are Knuckles and Tails because of their flying abilities. Speaking of which, how are the stages? Well, not counting Big the Cat, all the stages are pretty fun for the most part. My favorite stages in the game are Red Mountain, Ice Cap Zone, which returns from Sonic 3 and Knuckles, Final Egg, Speed Highway, Windy Valley, and Emerald Coast. All these stages are fantastic. While stages like Hot Shelter, Twinkle Park, and Casinopolis are fun, they are still not as good as the previous stages. Oh, and also, Lost World and Skydeck are both terrible stages. I cannot play them as any character without feeling boredom and frustration. For the bosses, I like Perfect Chaos, the Eggman battles, Zero, and of course, Beta Mark II. All these bosses are fun. However, the other Chaos bosses, except for Chaos 6, well, with Chaos 6, it's fun as Knuckles and Sonic, not as big. But I do think it's still a pretty decent fight. However, the other Chaos battles are okay at best, and the battles against the other E-Series robots, not counting the battle against Mark II, are bland and forgettable. That's all I can say, really. And also, the music slaps in this game. Almost every track is memorable, and even the main character themes are also pretty cool. Now, overall, I do think Sonic Adventure does have its issues, but I still think it's a fun Sonic game nonetheless.
No copyright law in the universe is going to stop me!
Next number is Sonic Colors. Now, I'll admit it was a bit hard to rank this game, but I do think this game is still pretty good if I do think some games are better than it. For starters, I think that this game's story does have some good things but some bad things. My biggest issue is the comedy with Sonic and Tails. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's just not really that funny, but the stuff with Eggman is great. Everything with Orbot and Cubot is funny, and I also think that Eggman's plan to use Alien Wisp in order to charge up his machine is actually pretty terrifying, and the game does have some decent interactions between the characters. And I do like how before you fight the final boss, Sonic actually pushes Tails into the escape pod to make sure he doesn't get in danger. That's actually a nice scene, and I do like how with the final boss, it's not a supersonic final boss. This is the first time in a while we just had regular Sonic in the final battle, which is refreshing. Now, in terms of gameplay, I do think this is a pretty fun game. I think Sonic controls really well, his homing attack is nice, and his boost is pretty good. My only real issue is that I am very hit or miss on the Wisp. Some of them, like Drill and Laser, are fine, but Hover is just slow and boring, and I'm not a really big fan of the Cube Wisp. I honestly thought that Wisp was pointless. And also Spike Wisp, it was okay. Now for the stages themselves, I do think there's a lot of fun stages here. Starlight Carnival, Planet Wisp, Tropical Resort, Sweet Mountain are all great stages, and they even made a great water level. That is impressive in my opinion. However, Asteroid Coaster is not really that fun for me. I don't know, I'm just not a really big fan of that stage. And my only real issue, other than Asteroid Coast, is that I do think these stages do have way too many acts. Like, these have like at least 8 or so, and they can get pretty drawn out. As for the bosses, Starlight Carnival's boss is fun, and the final boss against Eggman is fantastic. Easily one of my favorite final bosses in the whole series. The other bosses are just forgettable, really. I could not tell you their names, other than saying that one of them is a pirate. That's really it. Now, is there anything else I could say about Sonic Colors? Well, I do think the game looks great, and also I do think the voice cast does a great job, and I also love the music, and even despite my issues, I do think Sonic Colors is still one of my favorite Sonic games. So let's move on to the next entry.
I'm going to own the world when I'm finished with Sonic! Wow, will I really get that crazy?
Next up is Sonic Generations. For me at least, I think this is a great callback to almost every previous Sonic game, but it does have some issues in it. Starting with the story, it's not really there to say. It's mostly here to explain why classic Sonic is back, which is nice and all, and why we have familiar stages. But I do think more could have been done, like how in Chemical Plant and Green Hill Zone, both Sonic and Tails reminisce about the stages with Tails not recognizing Green Hill Zone. That's actually a nice callback, but I do wish more could have been done with the other stages after it. Especially with Crisis City, because remember in 2006, Elise wiped that game from the timeline? My second issue with the game is modern Sonic. Mostly his gameplay. Now hear me out. Classic Sonic has all 2D stages, while with modern Sonic, he has a mixture of 2D and 3D, which makes no sense. Shouldn't he have just all 3D stages, and Classic Sonic has nothing but 2D stages? You know, to separate the two more. And finally, the Time Eater. We can all agree the Time Eater is a terrible final boss and really sucks. Other than that, this game is great. With the stages, almost every mainline Sonic game gets represented. I do wish they actually had DLC stages from games like Black Knight, Secret Rings, and Shadow the Hedgehog, because there are too many stages that were left out in my opinion. I also do think that there are too many city levels, even though Crisis City counts as a fire level, but still, you know what I mean? Other than that, I will say I do think all the stages are a ton of fun. My personal favorites being Crisis City, Speed Highway, City Escape, Chemical Plant, and of course, Sky Sanctuary are all some of my favorite levels in the game, while Green Hill Zone and Rooftop Run are just pretty good. And Planet Wisp, yeah, they did that stage pretty dirty, not gonna lie. But in terms of the controls, I do think both Sonics control great. Hey guys, this is me editing the video again. I forgot to mention this, but Seaside Hill was also pretty good. It's one of my favorite stages in the game. And both of them are a ton of fun to play as. The bosses outside of the final boss are really fun. The rival battles against Metal Sonic, Shadow, and Silver are all great, with Silver being the best boss in the game. And even the regular bosses, such as Death Egg, Robot, Perfect Chaos, and of course, the Egg Dragoon are all fun bosses. Overall, I do think Sonic Generations is a great anniversary title and is worthy of being one of the best Sonic games in the series.
That's right, this is what you get! My super laser piss! Except I'm not gonna piss on the Earth. I'm gonna go higher. I'm pissing on the moon!
Next up is Sonic Adventure 2. Now, much like the first Sonic Adventure, I do think this game does have some issues, but I do still think it holds up overall. Now, I do think with the story, it actually holds up really well, despite some issues, like how Rouge could have just taken the Chaos Emeralds when Shadow left to fight Sonic, especially since she's a gun agent and was sent to find out what Eggman is doing. Now that she knows that Eggman is threatening to blow up the world, maybe she should have, take away the power source, that being the Chaos Emeralds. Even then, this game still has a lot of memorable moments, especially how this is Eggman at his absolute best, especially in the scene where he almost killed Sonic. No robots, no nothing. He just used simple mind games and almost killed Sonic the Hedgehog. That is Eggman at his peak right there, and Dean Bristow just delivers it perfectly. I also like how this game raises the stakes by having the citizens of Station Square view Sonic and friends as villains. That's actually scary to think about. And the final story also has some great moments, like Amy talking to Shadow, and of course, Sonic and Shadow going super. And the ending is great, but it's even more good when you consider the fact that at the time this game was made, Sega was planning this to be the last game released on the Dreamcast because of its sales. So, they thought this was going to be the end of the Sonic series, so what better way with it by having all the characters reminisce about the adventure they made along the way. Heck, I always interpreted what Eggman said about his grandfather to him wanting to reshape himself and using his machines for good, like Tails. And while yes, the cutscenes do have their issues, I still think they're fun to watch nonetheless. And the voice acting is still great despite some of the issues. Now, as for the music, we all know this game has a rockin' soundtrack. There is no issues with the soundtrack whatsoever. And now in terms of the gameplay, I actually think all the characters control really well. With the speed characters, Sonic and Shadow, both of them are a blast to play through, and I love their stages. My personal favorites being their jungle stages, Radical Highway, City Escape, and Final Rush. Now, my only real issue with them is that I don't like how all of their abilities are mapped to one button. It gets pretty frustrating trying to do the light speed dash, but I accidentally do the somersaults. Outside of that one issue, I think Sonic and Shadow control perfectly, and I think Sonic controls better than how he did in Sonic Adventure 1. Now, for the treasure hunting stages, yeah, I'm not too big a fan of these. Now, I do think Rouge and Knuckles control great, and I do like how they have a difference with how they attack enemies. Knuckles uses his punches, while Rouge uses her kicks. It actually makes them stand out more, but I will admit they did butcher the radar, and some of these stages like Death Chamber are just a pain in the butt to play through, even though Pumpkin Hill is still pretty dope. Now, as for Tails and Eggman, I honestly think they're a ton of fun to play through. I have next to no issues, outside the fact that I will admit, sometimes their stages can go on a bit too long, but hey, this is the one time in any mainline Sonic game you get to play as Eggman, and just destroying stuff as Eggman is a ton of fun to play. And I also don't mind playing as Tails. I think he's just as fun as Eggman. So yeah, I have next to no real complaints with them. My personal favorite stages are, well, I actually don't know. I think all of them are pretty fun. So yeah, not much I can complain about. Now, as for the bosses, I will admit have their ups and downs. For the rival fights, the best one is Sonic vs. Shadow on the Ark, as it feels like a true battle of equals and it has great atmosphere and build up to it. For Knuckles vs. Rouge, you can barely see your opponent half the time and it gets really frustrating. For For Tails vs. Eggman, the first one is pathetically easy no matter who you play as, and the second one is incredibly difficult no matter who you play as. Seriously, just screw that boss fight. Now, as per the boss on Prison Island between Sonic and Shadow, that one's okay. The biggest issue is trying to homing attack your opponent. Now, for the GUN bosses, they're okay, just repeated 3 different times. Now, King Boom Boom I actually enjoyed because it was just a fun battle as Knuckles and it used his gameplay well enough. Now, for the Bio Lizard, it was an okay fight, but the final hazard was fantastic. Easily one of the best final bosses in any Sonic game. So, yeah, to not drag out this entry long enough, Sonic Adventure 2 still holds up and I still think it's a great Sonic game even today. Here we are at the last 2 Sonic games on this list. After thinking it over, I've made my decision. Number 2 is Sonic Mania. Now, don't get me wrong, I love Mania, but it does have some issues. Mostly with the old stages being brought back. Now, yes, people have complained, but I do have this issue because I feel like some of them could have been cut out and replaced with new stages. Like, for example, Green Hill, Chemical Plant, Flying Battery, Metallic Madness, and Oil Ocean. These are good stages, but they feel really tacked on in my opinion. And with Green Hill and Chemical Plant, they just feel like they're back because, well, they were in Sonic Generations, so we gotta bring them back in this game. So, yeah, it feels really pointless to bring these stages back in my eyes. Now, for the new stages we got, they are really fun to play through. My favorite is actually Mirage Saloon because I love the aesthetic of it, especially when you're playing as Knuckles, and I just think it's an overall fun stage to play. Now, Studiopolis is close behind it, whereas with Press Garden, I feel like Act 1 is okay at best, but Act 2 is fantastic. It is such incredible to look at, and it's really fun. Now, for Titanic Monarch, yeah, I'm not a fan of the stage at all. Act 1 is okay at best, but Act 2 is grueling to play through, and I can't for the life of me enjoy it. At the very least, the battle against Heavy King is fun. And yes, to get this out of the way real quick, the music is fantastic and the game looks visually outstanding. Not a single issue I have with the visuals or the soundtrack. With the gameplay, Sonic is at its absolute best here in 2D alongside Sonic 3 and K. And I like how with this game, it gives you the option to use the drop dash, the super peel out, or the insta shield, so that way when you replay the game with different options, it actually makes it feel new. Tails and Knuckles are fun to play as, but they do play very similar to how they played in Sonic 3 and Knuckles, so I can't really go into much detail other than just saying I think they were fun to play as. But for Mighty and Ray, with Ray, he did take some time getting used to, but he's still overall pretty fun, whereas with Mighty, I instantly had a blast playing as him. For the bosses, the battles against the heavies were pretty fun, with my favorite being against Heavy Magician, mostly because of the callbacks to characters we haven't seen in a while, but I also enjoy battles against Heavy Shinobi and Heavy Gunner, whereas with Heavy Biker, he has my least favorite out of the heavies, but with Heavy King, he had a pretty decent final boss, and the Puyo Puyo boss was genius. Now, I know I forgot to bring this up earlier, but my other issue outside of bringing back old stages is going after the Chaos Emeralds. This is a problem I have in general with 2D Sonic games, but I always feel like when I start a new game, I just have to go after them in order to get the true ending. And in Encore mode, yeah, it's a pain, especially trying to find the new locations, and they're a lot harder this time around. So yeah, Sonic Mania, it's a fantastic game, but there's one game I do prefer over it. However, I will say, whoever thought of the and Knuckles mode should be in charge of Sega. I'm just saying, listen to that guy, he has good ideas. Number 1 is Sonic Unleashed. I believe that this game is genuinely fantastic. Now yes, there are some issues, like Eggman Land, Dark Gaia going on forever, and of course, Sun and Moon collecting, but outside of those complaints, I think that this is a fantastic Sonic game. The story is my favorite Sonic story, as it does a great job of balancing out both comedy and serious moments. One thing I love about this game is Sonic's interactions with Chip. Now, Chip could have easily became an annoying comic relief character, but thankfully with his interactions with Sonic, he he actually is likable, so that way his emotional farewell to Sonic at the end actually hits. One of my favorite scenes is when Amy meets Sonic in his Werehog form, but she doesn't recognize him, and because of that, Sonic actually feels bad about himself for once. It's a really nice scene that shows off that while yes, Sonic may be annoyed by Amy, he still views her as a friend. Oh, and also, every scene with Eggman and Orbot is hilarious. In terms of visuals, this game looks fantastic. It looks better than Sonic Generations, Sonic Lost World, and Sonic Forces combined. That's how good this game looks. It is one of the most gorgeous looking games I've ever played. Everything from the cutscenes, to the stages, to the hub worlds all look fantastic. This game looks like its own animated movie at points. It's that good. And the soundtrack is phenomenal. No complaints there. Endless Possibilities is easily one of the best themes for any Sonic game. And the orchestra. Every time I hear the opening orchestra for this game, it puts a smile on my face. Now, how's the gameplay? Well, with Daytime Sonic, it is the best boost gameplay we have gotten in the series. Don't get me wrong, I love Generations, but this game showed how fast Sonic can really go. Everything about Daytime Sonic is just perfect. The platforming, the speed, everything is fun, and I love the stages Sonic goes through. Some of my personal favorites are Windmill Isle, Dragon's Road, Empire City, and of course, Hiloska. All these stages are just so much fun to play through, and I can go back to them any day of the week. Now, as per the nighttime stages, I actually find the Werehog to be pretty fun. They have good platforming, good combat, and while yes, they can go on a bit too long, I still think the Werehog is fun since they do add combos for him to pull off. Also, stages like Missouri and Spagonia are also pretty fun. I just happen to prefer the stages I mentioned earlier, whereas with Shamar and Adabat, they are very mediocre. They're not terrible stages, but compared to the other ones I mentioned, they're not as fun, and the less we talk about Eggman Land, the better. Now, in terms of the bosses, I actually find the bosses to be pretty fun, especially when you're playing as Daytime Sonic, but the Werehog actually has some pretty cool bosses, like the Phoenix. Now, with the hub worlds, while yes, these aren't as good as, say, Sonic Adventure hub worlds, I do like how these places are small and confined and easy to go. Overall, I think Sonic Unleashed is a fantastic Sonic game, and one reason why it's my favorite modern Sonic game is because when I finish it, I always feel like I finished a journey, a game that really made me feel like I went on an adventure of a lifetime. And you know what? That's how Sonic games should be, in my opinion. So yeah, that's the ranking. I hope you guys enjoyed, and be sure to share this video as it did take me over a month to do this. And also, please subscribe to Star17 and Plush Andrew. If it weren't for them, this video would not be done. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed, and see you guys next time. Bye. And Merry Christmas.